one thing which I want to add to the discussion done by Dr. Gagan, just please go to the slide where the latency was shown. Yeah, here. So the main importance of doing exercise physiology is for the implementation. We have to implement in the terms of sports. We have to implement in the terms of human performance. So these two tests, there is the LST lying to standing. It has an important application. This finding is very important. Interestingly, when you go in the literature search, nothing of much is there in PubMed also. I was searching here, but these findings are very important. This is, see, the latency decreases here in LST, but latency here, it increases. Sorry, it increases in tachycardia here. Here from 6 to 8. Yeah, but when you compare to the Valsalva, it is decreases. So it has an important practical aspect. So the training which was given, see, there are so many different type of training, and each training has a different effect. So here the training which was given was endurance training. So endurance training has decreased the responsiveness here in case of the LST. But whereas in the Valsalva, the return to the normal was increased because the latency become decreases. This is important. So the applied aspect of Valsalva maneuver I will be discussing in my slide later on, because I have chosen two applied aspects in sports physiology or sports medicine, where Valsalva maneuver, the weightlifter have to lift heavy weight. So they generally hold their breath, or they have to do Valsalva this thing. So this finding is important, and I will discuss there itself. And another one, that is LST. What is the applied aspect of the LST? The applied aspect of the LST is just try to imagine yourself. If the training is given in such a high, optimum training is given for a long duration. So just imagine when this latency keep on increasing, then what will happen? So there is something known as fitness-induced postural hypotension. Highly trained elite player, they suffer from fainting. This is very surprising when the patient, highly fit, highly well-conditioned players, when they visit to sports medicine doctor, or when they visit to a particular doctor, they come with a complaint that doctor साहब मैं जब भी थोड़ा सा उठ जाता हूँ सुबह तो मुझे चक्कर सा आने लग जाता है. So you do every kind of test, then everything comes normal. So this is the basis for that fitness-induced or exercise-induced postural hypotension, which I will be discussing here. This is a normal. This is a part of the physiological system, because see, there is something known as specific SAID, specific adaptation to impose demand. This is the basis of exercise training. So what happened in endurance training, the purpose is for performance when the person is doing exercise, though adaptation is like that only. But what happened when in a sedentary, what happened when in a resting condition? So in resting condition, the heart is not able to cope up. That's why they have this postural hypotension problem. So we will discuss all this thing in detail there in my slide. So let me start my slide.
So very important. Thank you, Varun, for doing this, telling this point. Now, see, if you overtrain or do a gift training, and I wonder whether they have measured latency or not. If you measure them latency, you might click that finding that their responses are altered. They're too healthy from physical training point of view, but they have a high vagal tone, and therefore both LST and VM latency are disturbed. So maybe someone should think of doing this kind of thing in elite athletes' job. Now, one more point I would like to add: Rajesh Sharma also did sympathetic drive to myocardium. So how can you do sympathetic drive to myocardium? And that he did by QT-QS2 ratio, by doing QTC correction, Baggett's correction, and QS2 ratio. And this did not come significant. And anyway, I can share this thing. The training did not change sympathetic drive to myocardium in 2 weeks exercise training, physical training. We did one more study before when we gave exercise physical training for 6 months, 24 weeks. That time we found at 12th week, sympathetic drive to myocardium decreased. So if you give a physical training, sequential different changes have occurred. So surprisingly, in this study, we did not find this change. It was done by using phonocardiography. So phonocardiography is a simple tool, simple phonocardiograph. From there, you measure S2, S1, S2, so sounds, and you have ECG going on from so QT and QT-C interval you can measure, and QS2 you can measure, and by this ratio you can, this is electromechanical systole, you can find out sympathetic drive to myocardium, because more the sympathetic drive, more the forceful contraction, mechanical contraction would be. So electrical systole and mechanical systole. So this is one thing which those people are doing in periphery would like to do. It's a very good tool which we used here, and since we could not find, we have not reported, but the finding is there in the thesis, which is available, I think, on net. Now it will be available. So, okay, thank you for listening this. And if you have the question, you can come up later. Now we can go over to Dr. Byrne to share some more things. How do we go from here? Where do we go? What kind of a new vistas available? What kind of a new things we can be done in this field, which is a very important field. And thank you for listening carefully.
Let me check whether I'm able to share the screen or not.
I think you can share. Otherwise, I'll also try.
Okay. Okay, is there.
Okay.
Are the screen visible to all?
Yes.
Okay, ठीक है. So let's, after taking some basic, sir has done excellent work in this field for physical training, and he has contributed significantly to the knowledge of autonomic function. Now, yes. So let's start about the roadmap. What I will go is, I will not go into the detailed theoretical discussion. Rather, I will focus on the practical aspect and what is more in translational aspect and what we can do. I mean, from where he has started, from where we can go. So I am working in the Banaras right now as a assistant professor, and I am also looking after the sports medicine section. And so let's so autonomic, we already know that we can, he has done 3 types of testing in his latest paper, that is autonomic tone, autonomic reactivity, and latency. Autonomic in the field of the human performance and fitness, this autonomic tone, many much work has been done in autonomic tone by using simple watch related simple wearable device. Another is autonomic reactivity. To be very frank, autonomic reactivity and latency are not so popular in the field of sports and exercise. And these are, but there are so many applied importance for that. But the people are more concentrated on the autonomic tone, especially autonomic latency. Latency is not been done by any kind of exercise physiologist or applied on the field. So this has a tremendous potential is there. So before going into different section, let me first clear, what are the field where we can use autonomic function testing. That here we can see this is the different aspect of the physical performance or fitness. In the terms of the fitness, it can be the autonomic, this testing or this thing can be applied on health related or on the sports specific field. I will be briefly touching about all this point. Here, before I come here in Banaras, I was working there. So we have recorded some data also, and we try to record the data and try to correlate autonomic tone with the fitness component, especially with the cardiorespiratory endurance and the body composition. So I will briefly summarize that also, so that people can know what basic revision of the basic exercise physiology. So so the important point which you have to remember, or which one has to remember, is what are the potential area in the fitness and human performance where we can work. Where are the lacunae? Where are the, you know, the area where unanswered topic is there, very much translational. It may be in the field of the exercise science, or it may be field of the clinical sports medicine, where this thing is very much important. So I will touch upon few topic where you can the young you can guys work, or we can collaborate and work. So here, let me this is just a brief this thing which we have just in the month of January, we have just collected some data at AIIMS New Delhi, and these are the some summary. I just want to, you know, take to certain parameters just to revise your exercise physiology. Okay, number one, resting heart rate. Let's just compare between male and female, just like that, because females are very less, so statistically I have not applied any test, but just for revision of the exercise physiological this thing. So resting heart rate is very important parameter, one of the very simplest parameter, which is extremely used, commonly used by the coaches on the field. So resting heart rate, we already know that it is, you know, parasympathetic dominance is always there. So resting heart rate, you have to concentrate here. Resting heart rate is relatively, you know, more in case of the male. It is relatively less in case of the female here. Another point which I want to focus here, this is the peak heart rate. Peak heart rate means these two, male and female, we basically you know, subjected them to maximum incremental exercise, so that we want to test their cardiorespiratory endurance. Okay, cardiorespiratory endurance ke liye you have to do VO2 max. So VO2 max के कुछ parameters है, so we just want to highlight. So here, without looking at the VO2 max itself, just by looking few cardiovascular parameter, how can you predict the fitness? This is what this is my point here. So here in the peak heart rate, you can see the peak heart rate is more for the females, but resting heart rate is less for the females. इसका क्या मतलब है? What is this? So इसका ये मतलब है कि peak heart rate is also an indicator for fitness. But the thing for the peak heart rate is it should be maximum. The more fitter, the more it will be maximum, because the peak heart rate is directly proportional to the VO2 max by the fixed principle. You know, by using fixed principle, VO2 max equal to cardiac output into AV, you know, oxygen drive, and we already know that cardiac output is stroke volume into heart rate. So heart rate has a direct relationship with the, you know, VO2 max. So the peak heart rate. So here, another one is the percentage of the heart rate maximum, means the person is able to achieve that particular maximum effort up to how much. See, we can see that male has a little bit higher. The male has to work a little bit higher percentage of its heart rate maximum. That means the female is like to be a little bit fitter. The lesser the percentage of the heart rate maximum, the more fitter you are. Lesser the, you know, resting heart rate, the more fitter you are. Another point which is the heart rate recovery at 1 minute and 2 minutes. Now this heart rate recovery at 1 minute and 2 minutes is very important and a very simple measure. They are directly used by the coaches on the field. That's why I presented this data. So heart rate recovery 1 and 2 means the more you know, heart rate recovery, the more fitter you are. That means the more you are able to recover very soon. Time dynamic is involved here. The fitter you are, that is what we are seeing here. So heart rate recovery at 1 minute and 2 minutes. 1 minute is important because 1 minute is basically tells you about, you know, vagal reactivation. We already know that in exercise में क्या होता है? Exercise में number one, vagal क्या होता है? Vagal जो predominant होता है resting में, the vagal withdrawal has to be there. Now this vagal withdrawal has to be, you know, associated by a sympathetic activity there in the later part of exercise. Same thing just after exercise. So heart rate number 1 or heart rate recovery 1 basically tells you about the vagal reactivation. Dubara reactivation. The more higher, the more reactivated you know, efficiency is there, and heart rate 2 tells about the sympathetic as well. So from this parameter you can just that. तो क्या लगा आपको, फीमेल ज्यादा फिटर है या मेल ज्यादा फिटर है? Let's see the VO2 max. VO2 max is the gold standard for you know, cardiorespiratory endurance, and here cardiorespiratory endurance, we can see that the females are more fitter here. Actually, I cannot compare because statistically it's not this thing, but just for summarizing the exercise, basic exercise physiological knowledge. So by using certain basic simple cardiovascular autonomic parameters, simple like resting heart rate, like peak this thing, or heart rate recovery, you can indirectly predict the VO2 max. Also, this is what my point is here. So again, this is the, we have directly measure. See, this is just the what you call resting heart and all, they are indirect measure. So what we have done is we have also used the HRV on that, and this data was taken by Dr. Gagan, me, and Sundar. We three have taken this data within 1 month or so, and here you can see that the VO2 max is, see, what is RMSSD? RMSSD is a time domain parameter of heart rate variability. It tells you about the sympathetic, the more it is, the more sympathetic dominance is there. So we can see that as a cross-sectional level. This is cross-sectional, okay? So it may be, for more this thing, we have to do a longitudinal study. But still, here we can see that the more fitter the person is, the more RMSSD the person. That means by just because VO2 max measurement is very difficult, you require all the complex system, and maximum exercise. Exercise testing has always some potential danger is there. So just by measuring certain parameter of HRV, which just take 5 to 15 minutes, maximum 15 minutes, or even in a players you can do HRV for 2 minutes. That is not an ultra short HRV, which I will talk later on. So here you can see that a VO2 max, you can just predict the VO2 max also. So that is my point. So HRV has an important role. Here, latency, we have not yet touched upon latency, but I will further analyze the data and we will see certain things like that. So here you can, in fact, all this is the correlation with the VO2 max. You can see the all are positively correlated and significant positively correlated. So vagal dominance is very there. The fitter the person is, the more vagal dominance is there. So it is another point which I want to add is the frequency dominant, the frequency parameter of the HRV was not statistically significant. This is not surprising because in players in field, you never use the frequency dominant parameters. Why? Because many study has reported that they are not so reliable in case of the exercise or players is there. Because there are so many side effects are there, or so many confounding factors maybe there, like the breathing rate and everything. So what is important, what is practical importance for coaches and for players is RMSSD number one, and number two SD1. SD1 from we can get from the point care plot. SD1, they RMSSD as well as SD1, they directly tells you about the vagal system, vagal dominance. So these are the two parameters which we use in case of the players. Okay, and definitely we found this highly correlated with the VO2 max. This is what I want to see. Again, another health related parameters for fitness. Remember the first slide which I've shown was the body composition. So HRV do has a, apart from the cardiorespiratory fitness, do they have something related to body composition? Yes, they do. See, these are the different things you can see. For the BMI, they are all negatively correlated. Obviously, for percentage body fat also, they are negatively correlated. Means the more percentage body fat you have, the less HRV you will be having. Less HRV in the sense that time domain parameter here. So your vagal system is not there. Sympathetic dominance will be there. That's why higher percentage of the body fat is not good. So all these things you can simply predict by using a simple autonomic function in case of the players. The players might not be having all these things to measure their VO2 max and all these things. Another important which I want to emphasize is HRR1 and HR2. This is the recovery heart rate or heart rate recovery. This is very simple parameters. It can be used by anyone on the field, but it has a significant importance. See, AT. See, VO2 max, everyone knows. VO2 max is the maximum oxygen consumption. What do you mean by AT? AT is the anaerobic threshold. But in case of the players, you may be surprising to know that VO2 max is not so important. What is important is a lactate threshold. What is important is the ability to use that high VO2 max. That it, if I have a more ability to use higher percentage of the VO2 max, then I will be more successful as a player. Now, this ability to use as a higher percentage of the VO2 max is denoted by lactate threshold. And for lactate threshold, it is very difficult to measure lactate threshold because it is an invasive technique. You have to measure the blood lactate. So what are the indirect measures for blood lactate? There are so many indirect measures for blood lactate, like ventilatory threshold, like anaerobic threshold. Now, the problem with anaerobic threshold and ventilatory threshold is you require a high-end machine. You have to use a gas analyzer, which is very costly. It may not be available everywhere. But HRR1, that is heart rate recovery 1 and 2, anyone can do it. And the beauty of that is that it has a directly correlated with this one. That means the more HRR1, the more heart rate recovery rate you have, the more your AT will be, the more you're successful in case of the endurance player. Okay, so this is the importance of the HRR. This is, I just want to see the how simple basic things from lab we can go to the field and help the players on how to enhance their performance. Okay, so same thing after going the data which we have measured, let's go to the the possible areas where future studies may be there. This the future study may be in the field of the exercise and the sports training, or it may be in case of the clinical sports medical aspect. Like, for example, in exercise training, we can use the HRV as a ventilatory threshold. Suppose you have a HRV, you have a treadmill, but you don't have gas analyzer. How you are going to measure ventilatory threshold? It's very difficult. And the gas analyzer comes, it's a very costly machine. But you require ventilatory threshold. Why? Because ventilatory threshold is equivalent to lactate threshold. And I have just told you lactate threshold is more important than VO2 max for a player. For a sedentary people, VO2 max is more important. But for a player, because he has to translate his physiological adaptation into performance. So for performance, lactate threshold is more important. So ventilatory threshold can be measured by using intra-exercise HRV. HRV can be done during the exercise. So during the exercise here, but the problem with during the exercise HRV is we have so many protocols and many conflicting results are there. So this is a potential area where you guys can work or we can work. This is very important because when we say that, Dr. Gagan has already said that there is what you call the ratio of the low frequency by high frequency. So this ratio he has already told you about it. It denotes about the sympatho, vagal dominance and all that. This ratio, the important is just below the ventricular, ventilatory threshold. This ratio is increases. That is sympathetic system is there, but surprisingly, after the ventilatory threshold also it decreases. So there are so many theories behind it. Kyun aisa kyun hota hai? Because it's very difficult to explain. Sympathetic system has to be there at a very high exercise intensity. Ventilatory threshold, if you are exercising more than ventilatory threshold, that means you are exercising as a very high intensity. So at a very high intensity, you must be having very high sympathetic output also. But still, this ratio is not showing that much. There are so many theories like the non-neurological modulation of the high frequency dominant. So this high frequency can also be modulated by the breathing rate. We already know that. But the important is this parameter changes at the ventilatory threshold. This is what we need, because if we continuously measure it, then if the point where in the graph when deflection is there, then you can just find out what was the speed of the treadmill or what was the power of the cycle ergometer where the person was doing exercise. Then that is indirectly measure of ventilatory threshold. That can be used, that can be informed to the coaches, so that the training of that particular player can be done at that at that point. That is known as ventilatory or lactate threshold training, which is very much important. So this is a way by which we can use apply this thing to the players. Another thing is we can estimate the load adaptation and recovery also. This is very important. because what we require is physiological adaptation should be there, not physiological maladaptation. And this physiological adaptation has to be converted into performance. Hmm. So in order to do that, there is a very thin line. Otherwise, it can go to the overtraining, and overtraining is very dangerous. So HRV and autonomic function, including the latency testing, is very important and can serve as a measure for load adaptation recovery management distinct. Another one is toward the clinical applied part. Just like the overtraining, which I told you, overtraining is dangerous. I will briefly tell you about overtraining in the next slide. Another point, which is a recent field, is the concussion and a fitness-induced, postural hypotension, which I have just touched upon. So concussion is a clinical finding where what is the importance of the autonomic function in concussion and what is the importance for in autonomic function testing in fitness-induced postural hypotension. We will see later on. So this was based upon this principle. We try to do a particular project with Madam is there. Dhingra Madam is here with her regarding this, so that in players we want to see it was submitted to BIRAC, but unfortunately I don't know what is the status of that now, but it contains everything. It was based upon the wearable HRV monitoring, and we want to measure the training performance recovery, everything complete aspect was there, but it was not successful. But my request is as a MD and other including the sports medicine guy, if you guys are interested, then this study can be further done. It can be we can do further. Same way, another study was also planned. This thing, that is two study was planned. Actually, a complete write-up is there with me, but unfortunately not yet materialized. But we are planning for that based upon all this thing. The validity of the using mobile smartphone application for HRV, because autonomic function is so much important for players. The coaches has to know at the ground level what is the finding at the lab should go to the field. So based upon this principle, we have tried to do that. So let's talk about HRV. It is an inevitable tool, very much important. Indian players, we are yet to adopt, but in the outside abroad players, they are all utilizing this thing, HRV. Why HRV is important? Because you have to manage between the load and injury. Here, if you theoretically increase the load, then what will happen? The fitness will increase, but unfortunately the injury may also increase. So you have to balance, you have to make a balance between the fitness and injury. Now what principle is this? This is known as principle of progressive overload. In case of the exercise training, there are so many principles. One principle is the principle of the overload. You have to overload that physiological system in order to get maximum out of that. But the problem is sufficient recovery should also be given, otherwise adaptation will not be converted into performance. Okay, so a thin line is there where you can say that I have to reduce the load or I have to increase the load, so that super compensation happens or a physiological adaptation happens rather than a maladaptation. So in that case, HRV is very much important. In the same case for sports medicine who are dealing with the clinical patient also, it's also very important. You have to manage between the acute and a chronic workload, because it is directly proportional to the injury risks. The player will come with lots of chronic injuries. If the ratio is more than 1.5, acute means 1 week. If your all the training workload within 1 week is known as acute, and more than 1 week in the previous weeks, they are known as chronic. The chronic has to be there. More chronic is always better. But if you acutely increase the workload more than 1.5 as compared to chronic, then injury will exponentially increase. So, but how you are going to identify this part? HRV will help you. HRV is a very simple technique and it will help you. So practically, we can say that, practically what are the protocol कैसे करेंगे? The most important protocol is post awake supine HRV लेते हैं. Supine generally wakeful is standing is also done, because there is something known as parasympathetic overcompensation. Because of that, HRV may not be reliable in case of the supine condition in players. So in standing position also it is recommended. And for post exercise HRV recovery may also be done. Intra exercise, see, three things. Before the exercise, in the early morning, this will help you for load adjustment, for the load, because depending upon that HRV, the coach will be knowing how much load I have to give in that particular day. Number one point. Number two, after doing exercise, by doing the post recovery or post exercise HRV, then you may be the players may be able to know for how many days or for how many weeks I have to do recovery, or I have to reduce my training further. This is very important. And the most important point which we use in the player is the ultra short HRV. Even 1 minute HRV is important. 1 minute. So ultra short HRV. But as I have told you, the most important parameter HRV is always RMSSD or SD1. And more than that, we always recommend to use the mean and the coefficient of variance of different this HRV parameter for 7 days, 1 week at least. For that, what you have to do is you have to measure these parameters at least 3 times a week. Then you calculate the mean of that particular week. You can calculate the CV, that is coefficient of variation. Coefficient of variation is nothing but standard deviation divided by mean into 100. Okay? So by knowing this thing, what is important is you can see that how much load can be given. Kaise? For that you have to know something parameter known as SWC. SWC is nothing but the smallest watt while change. That means you have to identify a particular zone of the RMSSD or SD1 where your player has to be within that zone if he wants to avoid an injury. Now, what is important is this CV. CV means CV of the SD1 ho sakta hai, or CV of the RM SSD. CV is the coefficient of variance, but the most important point is it has to multiply a particular factor, and we don't know what is that particular factor for a particular athlete. And what is the Indian data? We don't know. So this is a highly potential area for research. Very practical, very translational, and highly useful for the players because we don't know this ratio. This is known as the principle of the individuality in training. The principle of the individuality has to be there. So if we know this particular parameters, then we can decide how much load can be given by the coaches and everything, and this can easily be used for a transitional purposes. Okay. Same thing, HRV for ventilatory threshold. I have already talked upon it. HRV is very important for a marker for performance also. Suppose in the morning my HRV is high. That means my vagal system is high, my recovery is high. That means I may be able to load my system more training may be done. So this is a general trend. But the most important point is HRV should not be taken as an individual listing. It has always to see with the other finding, like what the particular player is saying, and what his performance level is there. So you have to always correlate because it is not 100% accurate, but still it will give you a very good objective guide. So by using this thing, let's go to another one, which I want to show that HRV, higher HRV is always good for the player, because higher means time domain HRV. The higher, the more better. This is what we always assume, because the more endurance trained the player is, the more vagal dominant will be there, the more SSD will be there. But the unfortunate part is we forget that there are so many different type of training, so many different sports is there. Each sports specific HRV monitoring has to be done. So higher HRV is more, they may be more important for a endurance player. What about the strength dependent this thing? What about the anaerobic players? So depending upon the different players, HRV has to be you have to compare with the different this thing. So this is the Okram Bikram Singh. We have just he was the national champion for track cyclists. Now he's coach, he's my friend, and we have done HRV or just try to see whether he was in overtraining or not. So this is the point which I want to highlight. Overtraining में If there is overtraining, then what will happen? In overtraining, sympathetic dominance is there. That means recovery does not happen. That means ideally, if the person is overtrained, then his RMSSD should fall. It should decrease, because RMSSD tells you about the vagal system. When sympathetic overactivity is, it should fall. Okay, this is what we assume. So the coaches and everyone assume that the more RMSS, the more better it is. It is not so, because overtraining has also different types of overtraining. There may be sympathetic overtraining, there may be parasympathetic overtraining, or there may be overtraining depending upon a particular sport. Suppose, let's see, this was published in 2015. This was a paper. Here you can see that this is the baseline, and heavy training was given for 2 weeks. Okay, heavy training means we overload the player, so that the overreaching was there. But see, you can see that RMSSD was increasing. That means RMSSD was not reliable. And in the way, just after 2 weeks, 10 days of tapering means we reduce the load of the player, but RMSSD were decreasing. So what does this tell you? This tells you that though using HRV alone is risky, you have to compensate for that. You have to compensate with the autonomic reactivity parameters and autonomic latency parameters also, which we are not using at all. That is the point which I want to say, because we have to utilize that point. We are not utilizing that point. So this was a point which I want to make. Briefly regarding, this is just a theoretical part, you must be knowing, we always want to overload a system but never want to reach the overtraining. So there are 3 phases is there in case of the training for a players. The first one is overload, second one is overreaching, and third one is overtraining. What is overreaching? Overreaching is which we want to achieve, because overreaching will lead to supercompensation. Supercompensation means performance enhancement will be there overreaching. In overreaching, if it is combined with recovery. If it is not combined with recovery, then overreaching will lead to overtraining. And in overtraining, what is happening is, in overtraining, physiological maladaptation is there, performance will decrease in spite of the. So what happened in earlier days, the coaches, when they doesn't know the sports science and all this intricate, so what they assume is player का performance कम हो रहा है, player आलसी है, he is not training. बच्चों को बहुत मारते थे जबरदस्ती. The more trained you are, the more performance better. This concept is highly extremely wrong, because you have to smart retrain. और वो smart training कहाँ से आएगी? By using the autonomic system, because autonomic system is one of the parameters of overtraining and overreaching testing. Because overreaching and the overtraining, it can be identified by the different parameters like this, but they are not reliable at all. Like, for example, there will be performance decrease will be there, high fatigue level will be there, decreased maximum heart rate will be there. So there are so many parameters. By using, you can just approximately say that the player may be in overreaching, so we have to give a particular race, like testosterone by cortisol ratio may be decreased less than 30% as compared to baseline. So all these things, or if you give a particular at a specific intensity, if you give a particular exercise, then overtraining person will have a less heart rate. This is important. This is what I want to work. The more fitter you are, the less heart rate your heart rate will be there in submaximal exercise. Yes, sabko pata hai. But the problem is, in case of the overtrained athlete also, they have a lesser heart rate as compared to the untrained people. So you may assume that he has a positive adaptation. So there are so many factors which may lead to the doubt. That's why by using a simple HRV, by using a simple autonomic function testing, you may be able to identify in any of this phase. Same thing, this is what I mean. So I don't have to explain all these things. Like HRV and load, if there is load is high, this is number 1 means baseline, 2 means overload, 2 means rate means overload, 3 means tapering means we are reducing the intensity. So here you can see that HRV. In HRV, when there is overload, generally we can say that RMSSD may be decreased. And in case of the overload, HRV variance means coefficient of variance, CV, weekly monitoring is important. But the problem is it may or may not follow. So you have to take into consideration of so many different factors. So this is just a this study was published there in 2000 here. 17. So this was the, so we are not going to detail on this. So let's go into the clinical part. Concussion. Each sports medicine guy must be knowing what is concussion. Is very dangerous. What is happening? Okay, okay, ठीक है. So concussion is a highly common condition where a brief it is a very mild traumatic brain injury. The important point of the concussion is you may not be having any kind of the neurological symptoms in clinical examination because the changes is happening at the physiological level, pathophysiological level. So the changes may be very small, but for players, even a minute changes or minute small this thing will impact his performance. So that's why concussion is, monitoring concussion is very important. Unfortunately, we don't have any reliable tool for monitoring concussion. HRV or latency study may be one of the, the tools which we may be able to use. Not many research. In fact, there are no research I came, across on this point. Few people have done HRV as a marker for concussion, but latency study no one has done. So this is a highly, virgin area. The important point is optimum HRV is important not only for heart cardiovascular system, but also for the neurocognitive performance. Because at the elite level, at the highly elite level, what is important is your mental ability. Without your mental ability, you will not be able to perform well. So this is mainly because of the heart-brain autonomic interaction. So what is happening is normal physical examination is there by using a concussion. The patient may be having symptomless, but as a doctor, as an exercise physiologist, the coaches will ask you कि डॉक्टर साहब इनको प्लेयर को कब फील्ड में भेजना है. It's your decision. So your decision has to be objective. But the problem is we cannot rely on the physical examination because everything will be normal. But as soon as if you send that particular player to the field, then again second injury happen, then there will be a secondary effect, highly problematic. So certain tools has been there in order to see whether a particular player has recovered from the concussion. One is the biological parameters and another is the EEG. Biological parameters, suppose you can see that NA, that is the acetyl aspartate, it is the neuronal loss marker. It is significantly reduced after concussion, but you can see after 30 days also, after 30 days, that is one month, it is not coming to the baseline. That means concussion recovery may take up to 30 days or more. We don't know, but he is entirely symptomless. In the same way, the EEG can also be used, but all these things, the biochemical and EEG, they require a particular setup, higher setup. What about HRV? What about the latency study? That is important. Latency study is extremely important because CNS, central processing is there. We are focusing on the latency. It may be tachycardia latency or it may be bradycardia latency. No study is there. So you can combine HRV with the EEG training. Suppose, and here the HRV, the parameter which we use in concussion is SDNN and low frequency. Because low frequency has been, we already know that low frequency is combination of sympathetic as well as parasympathetic. And some study also said that low frequency has a component of the baroreceptor, and also low frequency has a component for enhancement of the cognitive, processing. So when you are doing at a resting level, when you are focusing something, then if your high frequency increases, then it has been correlated with the optimum performance also in some paper. It has been reported. Okay? So based upon that, they have devised a particular training that is known as HRV or form training, that is biofeedback. And also for the EEG training, EEG, what we want alpha wave, because in order to relax, your alpha wave has to increase or beta wave has to decrease. So by using combination of the EEG or event associated potential, by comparing with HRA, by using these parameters, you can even predict when your concussion, when your particular patient or particular player is recovering for concussion, or you can predict his performance, later performance. Okay, so this is very important. It is implicated. And another point which I want to highlight is post-exertional HRV. This is HRV or autonomic function normal in resting condition. If you do HRV, then it may be normal. But if you give exercise and if you do HRV, it may not be normal. That means in concussion player, in concussed player, if you give HRV after doing an exercise, it may be abnormal. So this is very much important for the elite player. You have to give a mild exercise, and you can see whether his HRV is improving or not. If it is improving, then you can you can say that this player can be certified to play in the field. Return to play is very important, or it may be used for a rehabilitation purpose, or it may be used for the peak performance. Uska acha hai, then he may be able to perform well, because we know that anxiety level and performance has inverted U-separate relationship. We require a particular anxiety also. इसीलिए what happens is when you totally dependent upon HRV, when you say that RMSSD बहुत ज़्यादा है आज सुबह, है ना, RMSSD बहुत ज़्यादा है, there is vagal system is very much, so let the player perform. No, it's not like that. The players which require sympathetic tone better, like strength, strength players, sprint players, उनमें क्या होता है, RMSSD जिसमें कम होता है, they may be able to perform well on that day. So sports specific HRV is very important, and not only HRV, autonomic latency. Here, autonomic latency is extremely important in case of the concussion, because HRV may be normal in resting condition. So this is a particular area where I want to ask everyone to do research, and nobody has done. So let's talk to another very important topic, that is trained men can run, but they cannot stand. This was very common long back. When I was practicing as a sports medicine doctor at SAI, then I used to see a particular highly trained triathlon player. He was having fits of fainting. He was extremely normal. So I was confused why it was doing. Then I have done his VO2 max also. Then I correlated with, if there was improvement VO2 max, there was increase in fainting also. So this, I have not published this data, but this was the correlation which I have seen. So what is important is highly trained in the well players, they may be having postural hypotension. This is paradoxical. Why paradoxical? Because in the treatment of the postural hypotension, we advise exercise. Exercise हम देते हैं, कौन सा exercise देना चाहिए? Resistance exercise for the legs. For if you want to give endurance exercise, then endurance exercise the dosing जो है, exercise prescription has to be in such a way that you cannot overdo. Otherwise, the fainting will increase, because cardiac remodeling होता है. So for that exercise prescription, you require something, depending upon which you can prescribe the exact dose. वो something क्या है? That is the autonomic function testing. That is the HRV. That is latency. So that is why how much useful is that. So this has to be this has to be differentiated from exercise associated collapse. What is exercise associated collapse? Very dangerous. When a particular person is running on the field, then he collapsed just after the finishing line. Finishing line mein he stopped, then he collapsed. Why? Because the most important thing is there is something known as eccentric hypertrophy of the heart. The heart become more compliant for the highly endurance player. The problem is that they are more dependent upon the venous return. Since they are more dependent on venous return, when your legs stop pumping, then what will happen? Suddenly collapse is there. That is known as exercise associated collapse. So when the collapse of a player is there after finishing line, then we can just see that ठीक है, ज़्यादा tension की जरूरत नहीं है, क्योंकि it's just a part of the normal physiological process. But what happened when during the exercise he collapsed? Then it is very dangerous, because his leg muscle or third heart is doing the work. Still he is collapsed. So in that way, you can apply this knowledge into the clinical practice also. So it may be because of the bradycardia. Those players who are having 30-40 beat per minute heart rate, they are very highly susceptible to fainting. Why? It may be because of the baroreceptor, responsiveness is attenuated, or it may be because of the sympathetic vascular transduction at the level of the vascular level. Everything, if you measure the sympathetic system in the mesna, there is a muscle activity wala. It will be normal. But still fainting is there. So different proposal is there, but nobody knows anything. And latency, this is what I want to say here in the Professor Rajesh sir work, we have seen there that lying to standing. This is what is happening. This is the same challenge which are giving to lying to standing. If you if you suddenly stand up after lying, then what will happen? Venous pulling is there because of the gravity, and your sympathetic system has to come up. So if your sympathetic system is not able to respond, if your pumping action from the legs is not there, then you may do fainting may be happening. So latency was there. You remember that table that here after exercise training, what was happening is there was increased latency for tachycardia. Increased latency means latency was increased. Response was increased. Response was slow. Suppose if you highly endurance player, what will happen? This may be extrapolated to imagine that it may actually be dangerous for them. But as you know, this thing is an endurance player is designed for exercise. So this eccentric hypertrophy is highly useful when you are doing exercise, but when not, you are doing some rest, like orthotic stress. This is what I want to point out. So autonomic function, especially the latency, is very important. In this way you can do the possible mechanism, because nobody knows anything why this is happening. Then rehabilitative tool is there, and exercise prescription. Just by using a simple tool, you can find out what is the optimum level of training which you have to give to a particular person, so that postural hypotension can be avoided. So this training, you have to simply do a comparison study between a highly trained elite athlete. Number one is control group. Number two is the resistant trained players. Number three is the highly trained elite players. Then you can give the LSD, and you can see the latency and the reactivity. That's all. Or in fact, you can study the what you call LBNP machine also by using that thing. So this can be taken as a study or thesis or something like it will be highly useful. In the same way, let's come to the near of my talk. What is important is something known as Valsalva maneuver, because I want to touch it, because Valsalva maneuver and LST was something which was touched upon by sir. So I just want to talk about the clinical or exercise training approach of that. What we do in the Valsalva, we have to force axial against a closed glottis, and normally in a training in autonomic function lab, what we do is we increase the pressure up to 40 millimeter mercury, and we hold it for 15 seconds. अच्छा ये बताइए, what will happen if we hold for more second? What will happen if we increase the pressure from 40 millimeter mercury to higher? क्या होगा? Many things may happen. This is basically happening during the during the lifting. The player is doing, they are holding their breath, and their forced exhalation is there. Why? Because they want to support their spine. उनके spine को support करना है, in order to increase the intrathoracic pressure, in order to increase the intra-abdominal pressure. So if the pressure is so much high, then for a temporary moment, bleeding may happen also. And you can fan also. Just after holding breath, you can just fan because of the blood pressure fall is there. Or intra-abdominal pressure or intrathoracic pressure is so high that it may compress the stomach, so that projectile vomiting may be there. This is practical problem. ये होता है. I have seen so many people who have done who have this projectile vomiting, and I have seen so many in the gym also they have collapsed. ये सब कैसे हो रहा है? This is just basic understanding of the Valsalva and breath holding. It is a double-edged sword. So this is the I just copy paste from the AFT manual. This is for a normal person. In the normal person, we can say that the fall here is never below the pre-level, or the high is not so high. If the pressure is more, if the pressure is very high, then things may happen. So another potential area of research is understanding the mechanism of why this is happening. By using the by using the concept of the Valsalva, by using this thing, we can actually see what are the changes which is happening in phase 1 or phase 3 or phase 2 there. So ऐसे करके we can basically understand a basic science research can also be done. Why? Another important is because we want to we want to formulate a pressure breath holding in such a way that we are able to lift the weight, but we are not able to fan. A particular objectional measure we want to measure, and this can only happen if you study by using all the autonomic tools. What is the practical approach which we have to see? Because when a player lifts, he has to do a breath holding. Otherwise, his spine will collapse. Spine injury may happen to the spine. So, and by using the athlete support bell and everything, what we are doing is we are just increasing the intra-abdominal pressure. We're just increasing it. But up to how much we have to increase? This is the practical question which is asked by the coaches to us. Doctor, kab tak karna hai? And we frankly speaking, we don't know the answer. This is the area where the exercise physiologist has to come. They have to practically, measure all the things, and we have to find out how much is the blood flowing to the brain, how much is the the fall in the blood pressure, all these things. So that's why this is important. And in the training, in the last level of the there, we can say that in case of the latency, if you guys remember, then you must be noting that after exercise training, latency was decreased. That means the person was able to cope up well with the Valsalva, or the person was able to return to the normal after doing the Valsalva. That means after doing regular exercise, the incidence of fainting, the incidence of the projectile vomiting will be reduced. That is the practical importance of Sir's work, which Sir had, concluded there from that paper. So, in the same way, this is what I want to this thing. Okay, let me check. Okay, okay. So this is the one. So I hope you guys, I was able to explain a few cases. And latency study, we don't have much. This is but the importance of latency study is very important in case of the concussion related, number one. And number two, latency study is very important for exercise associated collapse, postural hypotension. Number three, the latency study is very important in case of Valsalva maneuver associated with the lifting weight, which is associated with the collapse, bleeding or stroke, or it may be projectile vomiting associated with the weightlifting. So this is the practical point where we as a physiologist, as exercise physiologist, has to give certain translational research to our coaches community and the players. So ultimately, what is our aim? Ultimately, our aim is physical activity and training has to lead to physiological adaptation, and physiological adaptation has to go to human performance. It should not go to the overtraining. And for that, the most important point, which is the AFT and HRV, including the latency testing, because that is the one which will direct to the human performance, not to the overtraining. I hope I was able to explain to you. So I will be happy to take questions if there is any.
So thank you, Bart. Doing wonderful job by providing a link between autonomic function testing, HRV, and extremes of physical training. And you have brought very good and important points to the forefront. And actually, you have given the fundamental cut to the application of the physiology to the field. And that's what it should be done. I think I'm really thankful for actually bringing the best material and best thing to this. And there's so many questions and so many good thoughts came to my mind also, and might have come to the others' mind. And so before I go and open up this, I just want to share one of the slides if I can. And I just want to share just to maintain the continuity. Is it visible? The slide is visible to all?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So if you look at, this is how we started. Number one was the first project at Autonomic Function Lab. The response variability to the stimulus variables and during Valsalva maneuver, and the work is still doing. Even similar work was further carried out by Shival under different conditions. So what I'm talking about, the physiology is fundamental, and the physiologist only can perform such kind of work which has application to athletes or to a concussion in neurosurgery or even to the geriatrics. So something can always be done. Look at the second response pattern of Valsalva maneuver during pre-existing sympathetic activation. Similar thing can also be done. You can alter the pre-existing condition, like you're showing isometric contraction during the weightlifting and the person is performing Valsalva maneuver. Then that's what we applied thing to diabetes, but then we went to the fourth purely physiological experiments, effect of graded head-up tilt on vagal reactivity. Very easily doable. We didn't do latency that point of time because that time we were not aware of the latency part, but now people can still do this. People have head-up tilts and can think of doing latency part. Coming to the sixth was the one where the Rajesh Sharma and Navita Chaudhary and Navita Kaushal participated, and we had work with the SAI and also Physical Institute, Indira Gandhi Physical Institute of Physical Training and Sciences, and that's what. So this is what point of time we did, and that's what I'm trying to say, that physiologists have enormous pay, and then they can always look for this thing. So now this session is open for questions and comment. Before I go further, I just would like to thank you, Aditya Sood, Chandrasekhar, Ruchi Singh, R. Shisha, Minu Dhingra, Dr. Minu Dhingra, Dr. Kiran, I think from Chandigarh, Dr. Prathamesh Kamble from Nagpur, and Dr. Amar and Dr. Himanshu from Devgarh, and many more people have joined this. So now this is open for discussions, and people can come up talk about what they can think and what they can comment. But I'm very thankful for these two speakers for today. They really did a wonderful work today and expanded upon within a week's time or maybe 5 days time. They have actually come up to this. Oh, over to this the audience. And the newcomers and the people who are working in Autonomous Function Lab also must be very happy to see this kind of a thing. Yeah. Over to the participants. Anybody? Barun gave very good ideas. I've got so many ideas right over here, which you gave, and they are worth doing. Yeah. I think there are many young guys are sitting over here. The young people sitting over here, they can take up to how fascinating the world of physiology could be. And this is the example today. Yeah. So anybody would like to speak? Thank you, people, for joining this. I've already highlighted name. And so one important point which came, the Barun can take up this, the ratio of endurance exercise and isometric exercise, which is given. Can we find out how much person has been doing this two kind of in a balanced manner, and how they are affecting autonomic or some other profile which leads to partial hypotension? It appears if you do overtraining in one field and don't look at the other aspect, you might land up in a problem. So are there physiological indicators why you can tell that this person has been overtrained in one and less trained in other by some single marker, single pointer? It might come from autonomy.
Yeah, by saying that a particular person is going into overtraining, it's extremely difficult. There is only one, by definition, there is only one parameter, which that is the decrease in performance. That is the only thing. If in spite of doing persistent training, if a particular performance decreases, that means he or she must be in overtraining, and it should be associated with self-reported stress. It should be self-reported stress. In the physiological parameters, two parameters are there. Number one is the resting heart rate. Resting heart rate is very important. It is very simple and very important, because most of the time the overtraining, what is happening is known as sympathetic overtraining. There are two types of overtraining: sympathetic and parasympathetic dominance. So sympathetic overtraining generally happens to your strength training players which are more involved in strength training.
They land up in hypertension.
Yes, they are And the players which are more involved in the long distance running endurance type, they are more of go into the parasympathetic dominance. So their parasympathetic system will be very heart rate will low.
Okay.
Heart rate will be low. That doesn't mean that they are doing excellent. No, it's not. They are actually having an overtraining. So for overtraining, the most important, the simplest physiological parameter is a resting heart rate, morning heart rate, just before wake up, just before going to the waking up from the bed. If you have to measure, that will be the parameter. And it cannot be used as a single, it has to be continuous. You have to continuously train is more important rather than a particular value. If you are persistently decreasing or if you are persistently increasing, that means you are going into a particular zone which you should not go. Number one. Number two, another number two is also the heart rate response to a fixed exercise.
Yes.
We fix exercise, like for example 30% of MBC. If we give a hand grip that is isometric exercise, we can give up to 30% or 40% of the MBC maximum. That is fixed, and we have to see the heart rate response. And that heart rate response changing of the trend of the heart rate response. Most of the time, the heart rate response decreases. Ideally, it should increases because of the sympathetic system is there, because of the the exercise induced mechanism. That during the isometric exercise. But the problem is sympathetic system also gets overload in case of the overtraining, where increase in diastolic blood pressure, increase in this thing doesn't happen. So response of the heart rate to a fixed grade of exercise, it may be isometric exercise, it is very useful. And number three is HRV, simplest.
Simplest. Very good.
Yeah. So
wonderful. I think wonderful answer. So this is what has to be applied to the field, which has not yet been done. It has to go to the sports and other places. So again, I think I would like to thank you so much. We are reaching already 5 o'clock. We have crossed. So thank you once again for all the participants, and it was a wonderful tribute to Professor Rajesh Sharma, who did wonderful work. And let's continue the legacy of working fundamental physiology, which has application value, and that's how. And the same value can be applied to the clinical field also, because they also have the problem. They also have compromised exercise, and they also give an exercise training to come up even for heart or blood pressure, whatever you say, that is all. Once again, thank you so much. I think we will continue to talk, and these are the two things. Maybe I'll talk to you and Gagan if we can sum up the whole thing. Is all has been recorded. I think you should get this recording for yourself and others. From Dinu, I think it may be available. You can send it, and if you can sum up and write up, we can create a write up also, because this is quite latest. Come to the latest aspect, continuing nearly 20 years of work which has been done here, and then people are doing elsewhere. So thank you very much, everybody.
I will like to ask something. Sure. Can I?
Himanshu, yeah, Himanshu Shekhar, please come.
Yes. Hello, sir. Actually, I want to your presentations were very good, sir, and it was very enlightening also. I want to ask one question to Dr. Hanjaman Barun Sharma, sir. I want to know one thing.
Yeah, please, please.
That's very nice, sir. Sir, regarding this fitness parameters, suppose if the lady is pregnant, if she is having a child, then will the fitness parameters such as VO2 max and these things will be same or different? And also, what about this orthostatic hypotension versus exercise associated collapse in a pregnant lady during an exercise? Will this be the same or something else, anything like that?
Yeah, sure. It's a very good question. Number one, fitness. What do you mean by fitness? What is the definition of fitness? Fitness includes everything. Fitness doesn't mean that you have to do, day-to-day activity. It also includes challenges to any physiological, stress. Pregnancy is a physiological this thing. You have to be your fitness. Your system has to be able to cope up with that. That includes in fitness. So fitness, every fitness parameters has a defined guideline For example, fitness maybe for children, fitness maybe for adult, fitness maybe for pregnant women, like that. So we cannot compare a fitness of a pregnant woman with a non-pregnant, or we cannot compare a fitness of a sedentary female with a highly elite players. So everything has a set guideline is there. Everything is there in published, so we can always compare within them. Another one is pregnancy and exercise. Pregnancy and exercise is, exercise is very important in case of the pregnant lady. Exercise, doing exercise in a pregnancy not only improve the fitness which is required to undergo the physiological challenge of the delivery. Number one. Number two, it also helps for successful delivery and morbidity associated with the pregnancy, like pregnancy induced hyperglycemia may be there, all these things. So this is very important. Another one, exercise has to be maintained after pregnancy also, especially the pelvic conditioning exercise. So everything has to be maintained. And regarding the exercise related collapse in pregnancy, pregnant woman has to undergo mild and moderate exercise. That's all. It's severe exercise in case of the environmental challenging this thing is not recommended at all. So because the blood has to go to three ways. Number one, blood has to go to the child. Number two, blood has to go to the skin for the regulation of the temperature. Blood has to go to the working muscle. So kahan jayegi? You have to divert everything. For that, your system has to be challenged. So that's why certain exercise guideline is there. Regarding that guidelines, pregnancy ka bhi guideline hai. So generally, mild and moderate exercise is recommended. Valsalva maneuver वगैरह we do not recommend to the pregnant ladies. Generally recommend नहीं करते हैं. Depending, and also exercise recommendation depends upon its previous fitness level also. And दूसरा, exercise associated collapse. Exercise associated collapse is something which is dangerous even for a non-pregnant person. Exercise associated collapse is happen most of the time when in case of the dehydration. Number one. Number two, another most commonly exercise associated collapse causes is something known as dilutional hyponatremia. Dilutional, हमको क्या है कि आपको you are playing a marathon, है ना, अल्ट्रा मैराथन प्लेयर है, तो सब नॉर्मली क्या होता है, पी लो पानी, that is not the answer. Dehydration doesn't cause death. Dehydration doesn't cause mortality, because in a normal people, until and unless you have a kidney or liver problem. But hyperhydration with a hypodilute solution, sports drink and water, that may cause death. So overhydration is more dangerous, and overhydration is a significant term that is known as dilutional hyponatremia. Dilutional hyponatremia से exercise associated collapse होकर के death होता है. So the most important is you have to take care of the drink what you are doing, especially if you are engaging is a ultra marathon or long distance running, this thing. This also applies same for the pregnant lady. Okay? So pregnant lady are generally do not recommend for doing a high, depending upon the phases of the pregnancy. So that's the answer. I hope you get your answer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes. This is a very important question, because the vagal dominance and vascular tone, in some study only 1-2 study has been there in this aspect. What they have found is the vagal dominance is there, but the vagal dominance may not be the cause of the postural hypotension in case of the endurance player, because in certain studies, vasoreceptor responsiveness, everything was normal. In fact, the sympathetic reactivity was normal in 1 or 2 studies. But what they have proposed is some issue is there, and you are measuring from the you may be measuring the sympathetic outflow from the muscle mesna. It was normal, but what they are supposing is, this is a field to do research. What they are supposing is it may be related at the transversal level, like epinephrine or epinephrine may not be able to do the secondary transaction at the vascular level. That is, vascular complex may not be there. So that is their proposal. But what is the data? Data is lacking, because it's a raw field. Work has to be done, but this is a very important field. And if we are able to show that the receptor of the beta 2 agonist or beta 2 receptor, alpha receptor, where the noradrenaline and adrenaline works, if there causes some secondary problem in transduction at the vascular level, vascular smooth muscle level, that will be wonderful. That will be wonderful, because we will be able to explain what is the cause of that. So
wonderful question by Ansuya. Ansuya, I appreciate the two questions, very important questions. So if I take it further, if you give endurance training to an elderly person, say octogenarian, who have a tendency to partial hypotension, so if you give lopsided only endurance training and not isometric training, chances that he will be physically fit, but he would fall.
Yeah.
So this is what is important. This is what the balance has to be maintained. And so, in fact, the Ansuya is working on yoga, and therefore, yoga, when combined with endurance exercises, yoga is basically isometric exercises holding for some time, would give you a kind of a balanced. So the whole thing is coming up. You said higher HRV. Is it good or bad? Perhaps higher HRV may not be good at all if it is too much of fluctuation. And this we have seen at least in two conditions in our report, like even a person is having a psychological problem or more fearful, is always have a fear, has got or is a lean and thin person, does not have muscle mass and does not, they have a much higher HRV. These are two anecdotal observation which I made during this organ function journey. We have collected a lot of data. So it's important to work on both the field and find out a balance of it. But these two questions raised by Ansuya were very good, appreciable. Actually, both are research questions. Some people can do PhD on this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And thanks a lot, Varun. Dr. Varun, thank you so much.
Sure.
Wonderful. I think I also see many people have. Manisha Kar is there. So many other people have joined. Thank you so much for being here, and besides our own people who are here. So I see good, wonderful people, and it was a wonderful treat from academic point of view. And we have very high end, like it's almost a cutting edge discussion which has taken place on this platform. Really appreciate, and to youngsters who would see that how discussion can take place. I also see Prathamesh Kamble, very close work, close associate of Rajesh Sharma, and some more people right over I see here. So thank you very much coming here. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope all of you had insight into the system. Yeah.
Sir.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me.
I had a small doubt regarding overtraining. When you are doing an overtraining, can't you find whether patient is, the sportsman is overtraining or not using FFT, like frequency domain? That could be a higher peak in the high frequency part or the low frequency part, sir. So couldn't that be an indicator for overtraining?
Okay. Let me explain. This is a very nice question. कौन ने पूछा? Who?
This is Dr. Abhijit. Abhijit Anil, MD.
Okay, Dr. Abhijit. Oh, hi. See, so let me come from the basic. Why we only considered, or why the players only considered certain parameter of HRV and not other parameters. Let me come from that and go to your question. Number one, why RMSSD or natural logarithm of RMSSD and SD1 of the point care is used instead of the focusing too much on the the frequency parameters. Number one, you must be knowing that frequency parameters, especially the high frequency parameters, is highly affected by the breathing rate, respiratory rate. It is highly affected. If your breathing is less than 9 per minute, then anything which have frequency more than 0.15 hertz will be increased. That means your falsely you will be having very high frequency, whereas your low frequency may be down. So only breathing itself may cause a confounding factor in your frequency dominant parameter, number one. Number two, in case of the RMSSD and SD1, although they are a little bit affected the frequency, but that is not significant. Breathing rate does not affect RMSSD and SD1 as much as to the frequency parameter. That's why they are mostly used. Number two, they are very easy to measure, and it is and number three, the changes in the RMSSD and SD1 over a period of time. Remember what I've told you. The most important is the trend, not a particular value. Particular value has some importance, but the trend over a week, that is known as acute, because ultimately what is important, acute versus chronic, because acute versus chronic determines everything. It determines the chance of the injury. It determines the probability of going into the overtraining syndrome. So the importance is cumulatively. If you see rolling average, if you do in terms of the statics, then you can see that the RMSSD as well as the SD1 is more reliable, not affected by any other confounding as compared to the frequency dominant. That's why these parameters are used in case of the players. Okay. And number two, you are saying that cannot we use the the low frequency divided by high frequency ratio for the overtraining syndrome? There are so many types of the overtraining syndrome. What I just saw is just a tip of iceberg. It has a separate talk. there are something known as overreaching. There is something known as functional overreaching. There is something known as non-functional overreaching. There is something known as sympathetic overtraining, non-sympathetic overtraining. So there are so many different types of the overtraining syndrome. It is a whole together a big world. But ultimately, what is important is, yes, that can be used, but the problem is, for example, high frequency. High frequency only indicate the parasympathetic? It does not it also indicate the respiratory one. What about the low frequency? Low frequency is also affected by the vagal system. It is not only affected by the sympathetic. Okay. So, and very low frequency sometimes is also affected by the sympathetic system. And since if you calculate the normalized ratio, then you can see that total power has to be subtracted. The very low frequencies subtracted from the total power. So everything will be affected. So everything. So if so many confounding factors is there, then ultimately your reliability will go a little bit down. That's why we generally avoided using the frequency frequency parameters. Okay, and also that a person may be having a sympathetic overtraining side, or you may be wrongly diagnose him as a simple, depending upon that, but he may be having a parasympathetic overdominance. So that's why HRV parameters by alone is not 100% criteria. You have to have other parameters like simple the report, subjective reported by the players. Sleep is very important. This disturbance of the sleep is one of the essential criteria of the overtraining. High stress level, POMS, this is known as POMS, profile of moods, moods. So you have to ask from the players. So all these things combined together, and we may be able to diagnose a particular person is overtraining syndrome. That's why, depending only on the high frequency parameters, and diagnosing overtraining will be a little bit over extrapolating.
Yeah, this may be happening in army people, police people who are trained. They are woken up and then they have to work for daily schedule.
Yes, sir. Two important exercise or two important parameters which we say to a particular person who is suffering from exercise associated postural hypotension. Number one is you walk on your shoes. You walk on your shoes means your shoes is there. You are not actually working, but your toes and everything is constantly working in the shoes, which is stationary. that means you are basically pumping the calf muscles and everything. Because remember what I told you, the players, every heart of the players is designed eccentric, is designed in such a way that they are dependent more on the venous return. As long as your third heart, or your this is also known as third heart, that is the gastrosoleus muscle, the pumping action, as long as it is continue, then you will not have venting. So that's why we tell them to walk on your shoes. Shoes is stationary but still walking. And another one which we advise is stand on your balls of the toes standing. Then what will happen? Isometric contraction of the gastrosoleus muscle may be happening, and gastrosoleus is known as peripheral heart. So in that way, same cheese happen in the soldiers also, who are standing for a very, very long time. They are standing for a very long time. So the same thing happens to them also. Same thing happens to the endurance player also. But the incidence is very, very less. So,
but it's important physiological phenomenon. Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes,
thank you, Abhijit. Thank you, Abhijit, for nice question you have raised. I think this is another research question. It comes to that level. So
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So we have a couple of. Thank you once again. Thank you, Dr. Kiran. You're from Chandigarh. Yeah, I think she's there.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir, for inviting me. It was really a very nice discussion, and a very well tribute to Dr. Rajesh. So thank you, sir.
Welcome. Always welcome. You're doing wonderful work.
Thank you, sir.
So I think it's a good mix of new people and those who have worked here. It's a good connectivity platforms. They all should get connected now. We can share the emails and other things so that it becomes more vibrant. So thank you once again. I thank you everybody, and thank you Gagan and Varun. You did a wonderful work and wonderful tribute. I thought these people who can speak today, and they did good work and very good discussion. I think let's document all this, what transaction has taken place during these proceedings, and it's very important. So